I call Louise Upston.
Mr Speaker, budgets over the years have come in all shapes and sizes and have had names to match. We've had the black budget, we've had the chewing gum budget, the block of cheese budget. But a commentator recently said of Budget 2010 that this is the hip pocket budget. Because, Mr Speaker, that's exactly where people feel it, in their back pocket, where they have extra cash to assist them in their costs. They have extra cash in their back pocket, Mr Speaker. So the official name is the Budget to Recovery, which is, of course, an important step for us, having come out of very hard times last year. And, Mr Speaker, there are a lot of my constituents who are still saying that the struggle days are still very much something that they are experiencing. And that's why the recovery and the budget to recovery is so vital. So I want to just cover a few things. I want to cover why exactly growth is important, but more specifically talk about the impact of this budget on my constituents in the Taupo electorate, just bringing it back to basics and how this budget will have a positive impact on families. And then I want to also, Mr Speaker, share with you some feedback. I had 7 budget forums around my electorate last week from a variety of places: Tokoroa, Arapuni, the Chamber of Commerce in Cambridge, meetings in Taupo, to get a wide range of views on what people thought of Budget 2010, so I thought I would share some of those as well. But first and foremost, this is a budget about growth. And it was interesting because I had a constituent phone my Cambridge office last Monday and said, why is growth important? Which I thought was, a question that many people perhaps would know the answer, but obviously not everyone. And of course, growth is important in our economy if we want, going forward, to be able to afford the things as a country that we believe that we should have. It's about improving our quality of life. It's improving the things, whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's growing our businesses, growing our export market, so that, Mr Speaker, we can afford the things that we want to do. So the challenge is that we've got some of the incentives in the wrong place at the moment, and this budget is a major opportunity to address those imbalances. So we're talking about the fact that we've borrowed too much, consumed too much, and have had unsustainable increases in government spending. So Budget 2010 addresses some of those in terms of making sure that we grow through increased savings, exports and investment that is productive. And also it means that New Zealanders get ahead under their own steam because they get to keep more of what they earn. And that is such a simple message, Mr Speaker. When people go out and they work hard, it is quite simple that they would have the expectation that they would keep more of their earnings. And that's exactly what this budget does. So I want to move to the tax reform, which is, of course, one of the key goals and part of our plan, the National Government's plan for improving and fixing the economy. So if you look at a couple of key facts, and I'm particularly interested in those on low and middle incomes. In the Taupo electorate, we actually have lower than the New Zealand average incomes in our families, and so that's something that's particularly important to me as their Member of Parliament. So for low and income families, if you're talking about $48,000 income a year or less, 73% of income earners will now pay 17.5 or less in income tax. Now that's just a fantastic result. And if you look at a group of those, 2 years ago were paying 33 cents in the dollar. So for those families, for those individuals, that's a massive amount of money that they get to keep in their hip pocket. And that's why the name has come about, Mr Speaker, the hip pocket budget. So if you look at families, $25 a week better off. Now that's pretty significant, and it's definitely considerable to the families in my electorate. Whether it's, for example, someone who's on a pension, own their own home, by the time you've taken into consideration the GST increase and also the increase in their superannuation, they're still better off by $11 a week. And that's exactly what this budget is all about, making sure New Zealanders are better off and they feel the improvement as a result of this budget. So people have said, why would you drop the highest level of tax? Well, it's pretty obvious, really. We've already had major problems with the brain drain from New Zealand, and too many of our skilled New Zealanders have left. So it's really, really important, and I'll give you the example of my own brother who's a doctor. If he did the same job in Australia, he would earn 3 times as much. So it's really important that we do things like reducing tax across the board to keep them here. It's really unfortunate, Mr. Speaker. That side don't want to keep New Zealand doctors here. Well, I do. I want New Zealand doctors who train hard here to stay. And if that means tax cuts across the board, we'll bring it on. And that's what this government's delivering. And it's not about just tax cuts for some, it's tax cuts for all. But, you know, they can't handle that, Mr. Speaker. They don't like the fact that we're willing to cut taxes across the board. So there's benefits for all. One of the other areas, Mr. Speaker, that I do want to touch on that we haven't had a lot of discussion on is the $30 million boost in tourism. Now, if I look at the Taupo electorate, aside from agriculture and forestry, tourism is the biggest employer. So that's why it's really important to me, and I was thrilled to see in Budget 2010 an additional $30 million. And if you look at the fact that that's creating jobs, it's providing employment, it's providing opportunities, and it's providing some certainty. There's a couple of significant events coming up in my electorate, and one, of course, is the World Rowing Champs, which is being held at Lake Karapiro later this year. When we look back at the Games in '78, they had 40,000 spectators. They're expecting double that this time. So it's really important in terms of tourism spend that we actually maximise that opportunity, and that's what it's all about, making sure that those who visit here, whether they are competitors, whether they are spectators, whether they are part of the supporting or training crew, that they experience the very best, Mr. Speaker, that New Zealand can offer. In addition to that, we've also seen money into high-performance sport, and this has been, some of that money has gone into the high-performance rowing hub at Lake Karapiro. And if we want to do well across the country, and if we want to do well in our sport, we've got to invest more money into it. So the remaining funding of $1.8 million has gone into this facility. There's also further conversations about looking at perhaps canoeing as another high-performance sport that could be leveraged off the existing facilities. And, Mr. Speaker, that's what this government's all about. It's about being clever with the money that we spend so we get the maximum bang for our buck, using existing facilities and leveraging off that so that there are more people that benefit. And, of course, it's important that we support our sport and that they do well. Another aspect of the tourism spend that I think is really important, and something that I actually had a look at last week, Mr. Speaker, is progress on the Waikato River Trail, which of course is the first one that was announced by the Prime Minister. And that was underway already with a trust. They've got to the last 25 kilometres, they've got to the hard parts, and that's why the funding into the cycleway has been really, really important. Just at the moment, and that's irrespective of the work that's been done before today and what's coming, that's 20 jobs just for those who are working on the tracks. So that's why investing in our future and putting money into recovery is so important for my electorate. I just wanted to finish, Mr. Speaker, on having a look at some of the comments that people made to me or discussed with me when I had the 7 budget forums across my electorate. And as I said before, they were in very small places, small villages, up to the main centres. And there was one comment in particular that stood out for me of a gentleman who came to one of the Cambridge meetings. And he made the point very clearly. I did a presentation with some of the main points of the budget. And he was very clear in pointing out to me that he is not a National supporter and he's not a Labour supporter. And each election, he makes his decision based on what he believes will be the best for New Zealand. So he's followed a lot of budgets in his time, and Mr. Speaker, he said that Budget 2010 was the best budget he had ever seen because of what it will provide for New Zealand. So as a family person, this is a budget that's going to do well. For people who have children the same age as me, they know it's money in their hip pocket, which is why the commentator gave it this name. New Zealanders will be better off. There are incentives for them to work hard, stay here, and they will reap the rewards as well as this country going forward, Mr. Speaker, and that's what's so critical. So I'm extraordinarily proud to be part of the John Key-led national government that has put together a budget that is so comprehensive, that focuses on growth, that focuses public spending on the important things and keeping the money at the